Morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
If my voice trails down, just say speak up, because I have a problem in projecting. When you're old, things break down, and my voice is starting to be one of them, I guess. I'd like to start with a little story. On 5/2, which is May 2019 in Jacksonville, these young folks at a Christian school decided to play Senior Skip Day. Everybody knows what Senior Skip Day is. That's a day when all the kids decide not to go to class, and everybody expects it. I don't know what the big deal is, but that's what they do. They all skip class and they go to the beach, or they go play ball, or they go fishing, or whatever. So these two friends, their names were Tyler Smith and Heather Brown. They were members of this Christian school. And they go out to Jacksonville and one of the beaches there, and they started having a good time. And then they realized that they couldn't get back to shore. They ended up 2 miles from the beach, struggling to get back, and they couldn't. Being from a Christian school, the young boy started to have cramps. So he says, God, this is according to the newspaper, God, if you have a plan for my life, show yourself to me. Correct this situation that I have. As the story goes, this boat was going from Florida to New Jersey. They weren't going to leave until tomorrow, tomorrow, but they decided to leave on that day. And they're going up in this channel where there are no boats, and they spot these 2 youngsters. They rescue these 2 youngsters. They bring them back safely. Do you know what the name of the boat was? Any guesses? Amen. Amen. Now, is that weird or what? Amen. So today we're going to talk about boats, rescue boats in particular. In this area we have the Coast Guard, of course, and they go out as a matter of course, and they rescue people. They have helicopters and boats, and they also have fast boats. They have rescue boats, and each one of these boats is a salvation boat to the people who are in trouble. Isn't that true? They're in trouble, so they look for the boat to help them out when they get in the water. They also have a boat called a self-righting boat. Anybody know what a self-righting boat is? This boat you can't sink. It has buoyancy and all these things, and the engine stop, and the people in the boat are strapped in, and it's quite an ordeal. Anyway, the self-righting boat, wouldn't it be nice if we, on our journey, when we tip over, we have a self-righting boat? But it doesn't work out that way, does it? We cannot self-right ourselves, so we have to have a model. We have to have something to look forward to keep us on track. Otherwise, we won't know up from down. Because when you get in the water, when the water covers the boat, especially if you're a diver, you don't know up from down. The only way you know is the bubbles if you have scuba gear and all that type of thing. The first boat that was a salvation boat was what? The Ark. The Ark was a boat of salvation. Without the Ark, the people were doomed. Fast forward to 1986. 1986, there were 2 Jewish gentlemen near the Sea of Galilee. And just south of the village of Capernaum, they found this boat in the mud. What happened was they had this real drought, severe drought in Israel, in which the water table just shrunk to practically nothing, and they see this boat. So they call the antiquities people in Israel. They restore the boat, and they carbon date it. And the boat was 1st century AD fishing boat. Now it's called officially the Galilean boat, but a lot of people have called it the Jesus boat because it was the same time, the same type of boat that they had back then. Now this boat was, if you take a look at this, the end of that screen to the end of that screen, a couple feet on each side, is 27.5 feet long, the Jesus boat. It's 7.5 feet wide, and it's 4.5 feet tall. This boat could accommodate easily 13 people. Isn't that interesting? 13 people, 12 and 1. It's amazing to me that when they got this boat, now everybody is making copies of this boat. It had a sail, had 2 oars, and this is how people made their living back then. So anyway, let's talk about this boat a little bit. And Jesus was not a fisherman, but he had disciples and apostles who were fishermen. He had the unlearned. He didn't have the PhDs from the universities, or he had ordinary people like us that were in need. Tim was talking about loss of hope. If you don't have hope, you don't have anything. And when I was working, every suicide that we had, every note that was left, was absence of hope. When you lose hope, you have nothing. Jesus came to give us hope. And these boats are boats of hope. And we'll delve into that a little. If we go to Mark chapter 4, and verse 1. These are very short verses. Mark chapter 4 and verse 1. And again, he began to teach by the sea, and a great multitude was gathered to him, so that he got into a boat and sat on the sea, and the whole multitude was on the land facing the sea. He then taught them many things by parables. So Jesus used this boat as a platform to teach people. Why was that so effective when he was talking to people? Did the boat have any special qualities that people would pay attention to him more? No. The boat was special because Christ was in the boat. The boat is always only as good as the captain of the boat. The Titanic is proof of that. Captain wasn't very good, was he? Cost lives. Jesus is just the opposite. He gets in a boat and he saves lives. That's the name of the game, to save the life. Matthew 13, 1 and 2. Matthew 13, verse 1 and 2. On the same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the sea. A great multitudes were gathered to him, so that he got into a boat and the whole multitude stood on the shore. Then he spoke many things to them in parables. The Sea of Galilee is it's like a bowl. It's got mountains on either side. And when anybody has ever been in water, you get in water and it sort of projects your voice. A lot of times you hear people talking if you're on a lake and you think they're right next to you, and they could be a long ways away. And sometimes they say things they shouldn't, but you hear all of that. So when Jesus got in the boat, that was his way of reaching on. They didn't have megaphones back then, or audio equipment. And people listened to him. And again, because he was in the boat, that's what made all the difference. Let's turn to Mark 4:35 to 41. Mark 35 to 41. Mark 4, 35 to 41. I got these all marked and I still can't find them. Okay, 35 to 41. And with many such parables he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. But without a parable he did not speak to them, and when they were alone he explained all things to his disciples. On the same day, when he had come, he said to them, "Let us cross over to the other side." Now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and the other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to them, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, "Who can this be? Even the winds and the sea obey him." So again, they're in the boat. The boat is in a bad way, obviously, because don't forget this boat is 7.5 feet wide and it's got 4.5 feet high. And yet the water's coming over the sides, filling the boat. It's another point. You can never bail a boat from the outside. You got to be in the boat. A lot of times you hear people saying, "I'm going to leave the church. This is not right." That's not right. You'll never bail the boat from outside the boat. If you want correction, stay in the boat. Get your little cup and start bailing. Because that's the way it is, folks. Sometimes I get too blunt, but that's what I believe. I think you can't pray for these people. If you think somebody has a problem, pray for them. Don't beat them about the head. That's not going to help them. It's not going to help you either. So Christ is in this boat, and Christ is saying, "Be still. Don't worry about it." And they ask him, "Don't you care that we are perishing?" Is that one of the dumbest statements anybody has ever made? Don't you care that we are? He died for these people. That's why he came. Sometimes we don't realize that people have our best interests at heart. Sometimes we're too critical. Sometimes we just don't perceive the goodness of some people. Anyway, they realize that the captain of that boat, and that boat represents salvation. They were all safe when they were in the boat with Jesus, even though everything around them was chaotic. The boat didn't sink, did it? Because Jesus was in the boat, and you're in there with him. Amen. Let's go to Matthew 14. Matthew 14. And 22. Matthew 14, 22. So this is right after they feed the 5,000. Immediately Jesus made his disciples to get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on a mountain by himself to pray. Now, when evening came, he was alone there. So he was not in the boat, but the disciples had left. But the boat, now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out for fear, but immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid. That's the second time he said, do not be afraid. When Christ is there, you never have to be afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. So he said, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried out, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him, saying, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. A couple things. We've all know about this story, and Peter was always shoot from the hip and worry about the results later. But he was the only one that got out of the boat. Everybody else stayed in the boat. That was safe to stay in the boat. But when Christ calls, he's the place to be. The boat is irrelevant after that. He's the place to be. And then another point I think is, it hit me anyway when I was reading this years ago. It says in verse 33, and those who were in the boat, who was in the boat? The 12. The 12 were in the boat. Worshipped him. So at that point, did everybody in the boat believe he was the Messiah? Yeah. Did everybody in the boat worship him? Was everybody in the boat at that point saved? That included Judas. What happened to Judas? Judas, through his own choice, made the decision not to follow Christ anymore. That has a real problem with once saved, always saved. You have a free will. You can exercise that free will anytime you want. Judas elected not to follow his master. For whatever reason, he elected to do that. His choice. Let's not forget, you choose your destiny. Your destiny is, here's your choices, A or B. What do you want to follow? You choose it. I just thought I'd mention that because once saved, always saved seems to be prevalent and good feeling, but I don't think it's biblical. So it's not the boat that saves you. It's who's in the boat that saves you. I'd like to close with a story, true story. Anybody know who Ernest Shackleton is? Yes. Ernest Shackleton was an Irishman, later moved to London when he was a young child, and he always had this urge to explore things, especially Antarctica. He went down there on a couple trips, come back, and he said, you know, I really got this urge. I would like to go across Antarctica by foot through the North Pole and transverse the continent. So he gets all these provisions together. He gets a boat, and the boat is called the Endurance. And he has 27 men and him. That makes a total of 28. So they go down to Antarctica, and they get caught in the ice. The ice crushes the ship. By the way, they left London August 1st, 1914. That's when they left. This is after the Titanic disaster. They left South Georgia on 12/5/14, and they were at sea after they sailed there. They were at sea for 497 days without seeing land. So they got stuck in the ice in December of 1915. So this is a sailing ship, mind you. It's 1914, no motors, it can't get out, it's a wooden vessel. The ice is crushing the sea, so they decide, or he decides, Well, what we got to do is got to abandon ship and we'll get on this ice floe, which they did. The ice floe starts to break up, so they get in 3 boats, 22-foot boats, as opposed to the 27.5-foot boat that the Galilean boat is. Similar type. And they make it to Elephant Island, which is an 830-mile voyage. They were there for an extended period of time, and they said, we can't stay here. So Shackleton and 4 of his men decide to try to make it to Weddell Island. I think it was George, well, anyway, Weddell Island. And they finally make it to there, and they have to land on the wrong side of the island. They have to traverse this island, and they come up to this whaling station, and they look terrible, obviously. And the people say, "Who are you?" And they tell him, and they couldn't believe it. He said, well, "We need a boat to go back and get my men." They tried 3 times. The 3rd time they were successful. They get there, and this is on 8/25/16, year and a half. Year and a half. They finally get there, and they rescue every one of the people. Nobody died. Everybody made it. They started out with 27. They ended up with 27. In the logs of the things they wrote, by the way, when they got there, the people were all gathered together ready. How does this happen? Why, you figure they have to go find them somewhere, they'd be scattered. Here's what Frank Wild, who he left in charge of the other men there, Frank Wild said this. He says, wash up and stow. Every day he said this. Wash up and stow, which means get your stuff together. He said, the boss may come today. Wash up and stow. The boss may come today. Isn't that comforting? You know where we're going with this, right?
Yeah.
The boss may come today. The question is, are you as ready as Ed Shackleton was? Are you as ready as Frank Wild was? There were some on that island were not sure. Some had given up hope. But he didn't leave them there, did he? The man that came took these men and took them home. Again, the choice is yours. Are you going to be ready when he comes? I hope so, because he is coming for you. Amen.
Amen.